Monday's news cycle started out for me listening to people talk about the Michelle Wolf speech at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And the first thing, obviously, you hear is Ben Shapiro come out and tell the world how much of a dumpster fire the whole thing was. Quoting, of course, all the attacks that went on towards Sarah Sanders, Mike Pence, Kellyanne Conway, and anybody else on the right side of the media. Andrew Klavan, Sean Hannity, Michael Knowles, and a host of other people had many of the same things to say about the same people. So that should have been enough just to scare anybody away that would have wanted to take some time and have a look at this supposed dumpster fire. So what did I do? I watched the dumpster fire. I had to see what was going on for myself. So Tuesday morning, I got up, I made breakfast, and I sat down and I watched the whole 20-minute speech, listened to everything that she had to say, and drew my own conclusion on the whole thing. My final conclusion on the speech? Smoldering garbage can at the best. It definitely wasn't a dumpster fire with a bomb inside of it waiting to go off, like many of the people on both sides of the aisle seem to think that it is. And then when that wasn't enough, I decided to watch some of the commentary videos that went on afterwards, including some of my friends on the left. I saw a panel by Wolf Blitzer off CNN, and a panel on Morning Joe from our friends over at MSNBC. And it surprised me to see that they were saying a lot of the same things that the people on the right were saying, except of course CNN and MSNBC were using those points in order to turn around and attack the president. What surprised me the most when I saw the entire speech was the complete content of it. Shapiro came out right away and said that he wasn't going to play the full 19-minute clip, and so did the majority of the rest of the punditry. So I was surprised by some of the jokes when I sat down and listened to them. And of course all we heard was all the attacks on the right-wing people. Again, Pence, Conway, Sanders. Paul Ryan got his face in there. Reince Priebus even managed to get his face on camera throughout the entire thing. What really surprised me the most when I sat down and I listened to the whole recording were all of the shots that Michelle Wolf took at liberal media and people in Congress. She decided first off to come out and tell a classic joke about Congress not getting anything done. That's a joke that's been told thousands of times over again by comics on the left and right.
And just a reminder to everyone, I'm here to make jokes. I have no agenda. I'm not trying to get anything accomplished. So everyone that's here from Congress, you should feel right at home.
But part of the reason that I think that the people that are on the left are so mad at Michelle Wolf right now, and in many cases prepared to eat one of their own, is the fact that she wasn't afraid to take some shots over at people on the left media. People like C-SPAN.
I'm going to skip a lot of the normal pleasantries. We're at a Hilton. It's not nice. This is on C-SPAN. No one watches that.
In a roundabout way, and in addition to possibly insulting Mike Pence, she went ahead and took a jab at good old Anderson Cooper.
A lot of people want Trump to be impeached. I do not. Because just when you think Trump is awful, you remember Mike Pence. Mike Pence is what happens when Anderson Cooper isn't gay.
And considering the fact that when I started out on this video, I cited Morning Joe with MSNBC, it wouldn't be fair to let the little jab that Michelle Wolf gave to Mika and Joe over on Morning Joe.
I watch Morning Joe every morning. We now know that Mika and Joe are engaged. Congratulations, you guys. It's like when a Me Too works out.
And of course, throughout the speech, she decided to take one final sweeping swing at the entire liberal media and their obsession with the Russia probe. I actually managed to get a little bit of a chuckle out of this one, too.
Now, there is a lot to cover tonight. There's a lot to go over. I can't get to everything. I know there's a lot of people that want me to talk about Russia and Putin and collusion, but I'm not going to do that because there's also a lot of liberal media here, and I've never really wanted to know what any of you look like when you orgasm. Except for maybe you, Jake Tapper. I bet it's something like this. Okay, that's all the time we have.
I find it a little bit funny that none of the above mentioned were discussed anywhere in the media discussions, instead focusing on the swings that Michelle Wolf was taking at other women as if they were forbidden fruit. When I first saw the clip from Morning Joe that was discussing that, the first thing that they wanted to talk about was how much controversy came out of the whole thing, even though none of these other topics were mentioned.
You heard the president on stage talking about fake news. Well, there is now a controversy brewing over the choice of entertainment at this year's White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington over the weekend. Most notably, the comedian Michelle Wolf's routine, which, as the New York Times frames it, opened a divide over the limits of comedy under a president who rarely hesitates to attack the press.
It does frighten me a little bit in a free press world that anchors are out there that are ready to eat one of their own over comments that she made at a correspondence dinner that did take a little bit of jab on both sides of the aisle, simply because she wasn't afraid to go back and take a couple of pokes over at MSNBC and liberal media. And I do understand that Michelle Wolf is not herself considered to be an anchor person, but many people in the world consider The Daily Show to be a news program, and Michelle Wolf did get her start in mainstream as a writer for that program. Trevor Noah talked about that a little bit.
We have a lot of laughs here at The Daily Show, but comedy isn't just about jokes. It's also about being polite and respecting authority. Unfortunately, it seems that some comedians, like Michelle Wolf, don't understand that. Now, if you're new to the show, Michelle Wolf used to be a writer and contributor here until last December when she left to go host her own show on Netflix. And at the time, I was very, very happy for her, but that was before last weekend.
And one CNN commenter on Wolf's panel decided to go as far as to criticize the White House Correspondents' Panel for their selection of Michelle Wolf and their endorsement of her, even though they didn't come out right and say that they endorsed her.
It's supposed to be a circuit breaker dinner where we know this is tense throughout the year. We're going to invite you into this room. You have to find the right balance.
It's also, I mean, like if you endorse a comedian, even if you're not vetting the jokes, you're effectively endorsing what they say, and she is effectively speaking for the press at a very, very tense moment. And also, I mean, there's the optics of it, right? Because this is fine, the circuit breaker between reporter and subject, okay, cool. But it's not that. It's the reporter and the subject, and you're inviting all of America into the living room where you're having that circuit breaker chat, you know? And the optics of it do not translate necessarily that well. And if you are somebody who is already primed to be skeptical of whether the media is, you know, unbiased or not, it's difficult to have the disclaimer that says, wait a second, this is just an outtake, this isn't really us, because you see what you see.
While I didn't think personally that any of the jokes that surrounded Kellyanne Conway and Sarah Sanders were funny, and the abortion jokes at Michelle Wolf drew a lot of groans from the audience, along with some of the other jokes surrounding some of the conservative punditry, I definitely expected the response from most of the podcasters, journalists, and newscasters that I listen to on a daily basis. Everybody wanted to jump on the bandwagon and defend Sarah Sanders and Kellyanne Conway. And I think a part of that is good, because in a true roast, both of them would have had a chance to get up on the stage and start throwing insults back at Wolf. What I didn't expect was for the liberal media to come out and turn on Michelle Wolf as well, citing many of the same points. I was completely shocked and surprised up until the point that both commentary programs that I watched turned around and tried to use the controversy to ostracize Trump himself and alienate all of his supporters that might have been watching at the time.
We can't get down.
I don't agree with what has been said so far here, to be honest. Okay. The comedian said some things. Okay, you know, the comedian's jokes were not vetted by. I don't believe the comedian's speaking for the reporters at all. In a lot of ways, the president's been attacking the press for 3 years. If those jokes were not made last night, he would continue to attack the press. The idea that if we had a more neutral comedian, if Jay Leno had been there, that he would not attack the press, I think is nonsense.
Well, I mean, and of course, all this comes when yesterday on Twitter, there's so many people that supported Donald Trump were so shocked and stunned and deeply saddened by what happened. But as your fellow traveler, John Podhoretz, said about Trumpkins, they probably should put a big mirror up in front of them and look at the person they've been laughing with and supporting for some time.
But the most important thing that I took away from this disaster of a speech was the reaction to it from both the mainstream press and the alternative media. Now, I have heard pressers from both sides and all channels, MSNBC, CNN, C-SPAN, and Fox News, call for an apology from the White House Correspondents Association and from Michelle Wolf herself. But in all the non-mainstream media that I've read, listened to, and watched since this disaster happened, I've never heard one commenter call for Michelle Wolf or the Correspondents Association to apologize. They all defend her right to say what she said. They don't want to be forced to enjoy it if they didn't really enjoy it, but they defend her right to say it to the death. And that's the important takeaway that I have to this. What are your thoughts on the controversy surrounding the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Do you think Wolf should apologize? Or do you think she really did have the right to come up and say anything that she wanted to say in the hopes that somebody would listen? I always welcome thoughtful and productive discussion in the comments section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Thanks as always for watching, and remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions.